Hello, everyone, and welcome to my talk on leadership in the environment. I want to start by asking people here a couple questions. So first of all, what brought you here? What brought you to a talk on leadership and the environment? Next, what do you mean by leadership? So this is obviously just me practicing, so I'm not going to wait for the answers. How does leadership relate to the environment? Why would I bring these two topics together? And then what are you looking for in this presentation? Are you looking to be led? Are you looking to learn to lead? Are you looking to learn about the environment? Are you looking to learn about leadership? And okay, also before getting started, I'd like to agree on a few points. And it's not a guarantee, especially in this country, that we would agree on these things, but that there is a greenhouse effect, that the earth is warming up because we're capturing more sun because there are greenhouse gases in the environment like carbon dioxide and methane. And it likely results are that the temperature is going to rise, the polar ice caps are going to melt, and Greenland is going to melt, and so the sea levels are going to rise. It could be that hundreds of millions of people are displaced from their homes, that weather will change, and things like that. Next, that science is helpful, and I support science. I suspect you guys too, but it's long past conclusive that humans are causing global warming, that these effects are very likely going to happen, that we don't have to keep, I mean, it's great to keep decreasing the error bars and finding out about these things, but that we basically know what's going on and that it's happening. That we want to decrease global warming, that there are some people who say, well, what's done is done, there's nothing we can do about it, the catastrophe is going to happen, I might as well just enjoy myself, but that there are degrees of disaster and that we want to decrease these effects, that we, hopefully it doesn't have to be as bad as it could possibly be. That it's human caused, that it's not just the temperature rising on its own, but that we are doing it. It's our emissions of carbon dioxide. And it may be through an intermediary thing like we're chopping down rainforests, or it may be that that cows are digesting food and we're producing all the cows. And that since if we're causing it, then decreasing global warming means changing our behavior, changing human behavior. That's leadership, is changing behavior. Now, not everybody agrees on these things. If you don't agree, this probably is not the talk for you. That's not to say that there isn't a good talk that we could come up with, but you may be frustrated with this talk because we're going to be taking for granted things that, or we're going to consider concluded things that you might not. If you want to leave, I understand. If not, let's go. So a bit about myself. I have a PhD in physics. I worked on a satellite. I left to become an entrepreneur. I got an MBA. The media loves me. Esquire called me best and brightest. I teach as an adjunct at NYU at Columbia Business School. I lecture and I coach. And I'm a blogger. Here's my blog. I'm a columnist for Inc. Here's my column. And I'm an author. My book just came out, Leadership Step by Step, a couple months ago. It's hit bestseller. Okay, so that's a quick bit about me. Now let's talk about you. Now, either you are perfect or there's stuff about yourself that you would like to improve. If you're perfect, please see me afterward because I would love to learn from you. If you're not perfect, then that means there are things that you want to improve and you probably have role models. If you have role models, they're probably people you want to emulate. Maybe not be exactly like them, but for me, it's Mandela and Gandhi and Martin Luther King, Thoreau, people like that. These are my role models. And presumably you have role models too, people that you would like to emulate. So there are things about them that you would like to emulate. If so, and keep a couple of them in mind right now, maybe one, maybe a couple others, how did they become that way? Now, there's lots of ways that they could be, but I think probably one way could be that they were just born that way and they put no effort into it, and that's just it. And it was just easy for them, no problem at all. Or possibly they went through lots of challenges and had to persevere through mistakes and things that other people didn't try to do, but they did, and they worked their way through it. And that's what made them, at least the part of them that you want to emulate, made that part the way they are. Now, I'm going to guess that most people in this room, it's more of the second. Could be lots of other things, but at least some element of taking on these challenges and perseverance. Now, there's a thought that I hear people say, and I also hear people kind of not saying it, but I think they probably think it. And I'm not above this myself. I think this way too. That people will think something like, if they were heroes Mandela, they might think something like, if I were born under apartheid, then I would have something to fight against. And like Mandela, maybe I wouldn't become like Mandela, but I would have a challenge to force myself to grow to live up to. And so maybe I wouldn't be become the father of the nation, but at least I would work hard to become and reach my potential. But alas, poor me, pity on me that I was born into a comfortable middle-class environment. And sadly, I did not have a big challenge. I would have gone up to that challenge. I would live up to it if it was there. But sadly, I haven't had that challenge. And therefore, I can't be like Martin Luther King. I can't be like Rachel Carson. And poor me. Well, you are in luck because you happen to live in a time when there is a big global challenge that requires leadership, that requires perseverance, that requires you rising up and reaching your potential, not waiting for others. And that is what this talk is about, that you have the opportunity to develop yourself, to have however big of a challenge that you want, to live up to your potential that you told me that you want to live up to, that your people that you want to become like, that they had to go through. This is your chance. And if you look at it any other way, look at it this way too, that this is your opportunity to rise up, to find the potential that you can live up to, just like the people that you told me that you wanted to emulate. Now, in my life, a big piece of me becoming more mature, a big piece of maturation has been developing responsibility and accountability. Things that when I was a kid, I did not like. When I was a kid, it was like, not me, I didn't do it, not my fault. I didn't want responsibility, I didn't want accountability. But when I grew up, it's something that I found made my life better. Now, being responsible means sometimes I can't do things that I used to like to do, or it means that I have to do things that I used to not like to do. But it's improved my life, mainly because it's improved my relationships, because people can trust you more when you're responsible. People will depend on you more when you're accountable. You get things done. People want to work with you more. And these things are what have made my life, they have improved my life. Even though before, when I was younger, it would seem to take away my freedom. It would seem to give me fewer options. But it has made my life better. And when you think of what you're accountable to and what you're responsible for, it tends to be other people. And you know, for a while you think you're going to be helping people means helping them how you want to, but eventually you learn you have to have empathy and compassion and understanding what other people care about in order to help them. These are the fundamental skills of leading, especially among my role models. I presume that's going to be the case among your role models too, that they were responsible and accountable to others, that they worked on what they did to help other people, even though that sometimes meant doing things that they didn't want to do and not doing things that they did want to do, because despite the comfort and convenience of, you know, short-term doing stuff for yourself, in the long run, doing things, taking other people's interest into account improves your lives and theirs. So, and this is what we're going to talk about. A lot of people look at what they do for global warming as they look at it, if they want to reduce their consumption, they want to reduce their pollution, they want to reduce their contribution to global warming. A lot of people today look at that as sacrifice and deprivation. And my big thing today is to put to you that it's no more sacrifice or deprivation than lots of other things that people have done in the past. Does anybody regret? I bet that not a single person who went to the Washington, D.C. Mall on August 28th, 1963, has any regret for going to see Martin Luther King give the I Have a Dream speech. It was a sweltering hot summer day in D.C., not a pleasant place to be. And I bet not a single person regrets having gone there, even though they could have stayed home and watched the movie in air-conditioned comfort. In fact, I went up and looked this online to find out what the top #1 movie of that week was Flipper. Do you think anybody regrets having gone not to see Flipper and instead went to see the I Have a Dream speech? Actually, a couple weeks before, it was Gidget Goes to Rome. This is the comfort and convenience that people could have had and probably enjoyed themselves. That's what they could have had instead of going to see the Martin Luther King I Have a Dream speech. I put to you that you want to do things like go out in the sweltering summer heat for the reasons I'm about to say. Another thing, do you think that anybody regrets having walked during the Montgomery bus boycott of 10 years before that? No one had any idea that the I Have a Dream speech was coming. All they knew that, you know, they were going to have to walk, and it ended up going on for more than a year of walking in Montgomery, also hot, also unpleasant. But like Martin Luther King quoted one woman, a 72-year-old woman who walked through the Montgomery bus boycott. She said, "My feet is tired, but my soul is at rest." Now, a couple slides ago, I talked about where I hope that we would agree on global warming happening and that humans are causing it, and that changing human behavior we will need to do in order to change it from keeping happening. That doesn't mean we agree on everything. I've been giving this talk many times, and it's a minefield because of where people disagree. So despite the agreement above, I still get lots of things where if I ask people, is global warming a problem? Across the board, basically people say yes. It's rare that I find someone disagreeing. They may be skeptical about some facts, but they still generally agree that it's happening, and they agree it's a problem. When I say, do people have to change their behavior? They're like, yes, of course, people must change their behavior. That's what's causing the thing. That's what we have to do. And I say, will you change your behavior? And they say, no. Yes, people have to change their behavior, but you must understand about me, I have family all over the place, and I have a sick father, and I have a daughter who's doing this, and so forth. And my job depends on it. And you have to understand that, yes, people do have to change their behavior. And I know it's causing it, but I must keep doing these things that are causing it. So please tell other people to change their behavior. And so this raises a lot of emotional intensity, which makes it difficult. And a lot of my talks up until now have been how to get through this minefield without getting really emotional intensity where people push back or resist what I'm talking about. And this is not about right or wrong or good or bad. This is not about me telling you what to do. This is about you and what you value and doing what you consider right. That's leading yourself. And if it goes well, and by the way, it's about finding joy in this, about living a better life. Not a better life that I think is better, a better life by your standards, by what you consider, what you want to emulate, what you will look back on and say, I'm glad that I did that. And it doesn't, I'm sure several of you are in the audience sitting right now thinking, yes, we do have to change. I like steak, and if that means that the planet's going to suffer, that's the way it's got to be. I like steak too much. Or, you know, my dad had a stroke. I got to go see him. And that's in Miami. That's the way it's got to be. Maybe you're thinking that way. If so, we'll see what happens. But I think, you know, a lot of people went to go see Gidget. Probably more people saw Gidget Goes to Rome and Flipper than went to the I Have a Dream speech, as many people as did show up there. But I'm sure the people, I'm sure one group would rather have been the other group and not the other way around. The thing is that it's always somebody else. It's always someone else who has to change. This country is filled with people. You know, the price of gas drops a penny a gallon and everyone's like, oh, I gotta get an SUV. And I very rarely come across people who say, I will do it first. And I live in a world, I teach entrepreneurship, I teach leadership, I wrote a book on leadership, I talk to lots of people who want to be entrepreneurs, who are entrepreneurs, who want to be leaders, who are leaders. And across the board, they say other people should change, but not me. And we have a nation and a large part of the world that is not changing their behavior despite knowing the situation. It's always somebody else. For example, someone who would know this stuff the most, a graduate student at Columbia who studied earth science, who's getting a PhD specifically to study earth science, specifically because he wants to make a contribution here. I'm talking to him, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later. And he's saying how he's got to fly to Australia. Look, I just have to do it, Josh, because there's something that only in this one place in Australia can you measure this geographic formation of whatever. It's the only place in the world to do it, so I have to go. So I've been not flying for a while, as I'll talk about later. And I say to him, could you call someone up in Australia to go and measure it for you? Are there geologists there that could do this? And he goes, oh yeah, I guess I could. So he was going to fly with a whole bunch of equipment and probably a whole team all the way around the world, all the way to Australia, and he knows what's happening. He knows what's going on, and he still doesn't. It's like other people have to change. This is one of my big criticisms of science, is that they talk about all this stuff. They give you a bunch of facts, but they're not changing themselves. And anyway, I'll get to that in a little bit. The thing is that everyone who talks about, I got to go see this, you know, travel is important. We gotta travel. Josh, you traveled a lot, and you know, steak is healthy. The thing is that everything looks good if you only look at the positives and you ignore the external costs. Everyone is very quick to say, all these big companies, they pollute and they don't take into account that someone else has to clean up their mess. Their externalities, we got to make sure that they pay for their externalities. And yet people don't look at their own externalities. And the thing is that when I talked about maturation, responsibility, and accountability, That's looking at your own externalities. And I know that you don't want to do it. You want to be able to fly all over the world. You want to eat whatever you want. You want to do whatever you want. And you think it's going to be deprivation and sacrifice not to. I think you'll see that that's not the case. I think looking at your role models, they didn't get there by watching Flipper. Another example of how prevalent this is. So NYU's president, he's a new president, Andrew Hamilton, wrote the following email during spring break. This is a clip from it. Sorry, it's going to be a lot of text. A dozen people from liberal studies. All right, I'm not going to go to the details, just the highlighted parts. A bunch of students are going to Antigua, Guatemala to build homes. They're going to Louisiana. They're going to Stone Mountain, Georgia. Others are going to El Cedral, a town in the Dominican Republic, to build a levee. They're going to Ghana. They're going to Accra. And the tone that he's talking about this, that's a bunch of facts, but he says, even for those of us who will not be traveling to a service project, we can all be proud of our friends and colleagues who are devoting their spring break to serving others. All right, serving others, big fan of. That's what leadership to me is about, is to serve others. But I want to separate serving others from traveling all over the world. To send a bunch of students to build homes in Guatemala or to build levees, I don't believe, look, my students at NYU are tremendous, but I do not believe that they're the best people to build homes. For example, for one thing, NYU is right now doing this big thing, recognizing how much costs of education have gone up in this country recently. They're doing a big program to reduce the costs. And one of the things that NYU is doing is building buildings. Okay, so if NYU is trying to reduce costs and it's building buildings, why not use its own students to build its own buildings if they're so good to build these buildings in Guatemala? Yeah, you could say there's like laws and union regulations and stuff like that, but NYU has a lot of clout in New York City. If NYU wanted its students building its buildings, it could get it done. Why? And it would save money. Why not? I think everybody knows that NYU students are not going to build great buildings. So why send them to Guatemala? If it's to help people there, are people in Guatemala somehow not able to build buildings? Do they not have the ability to do it? For that matter, if you want to build the best homes, I'm sure that there are out of work carpenters and electricians and plumbers in the United States that we could send there instead who would be much more effective than NYU students. For that matter, if NYU students really wanted to help people, they could take a subway trip. There's plenty of low-income families with crappy housing or that need housing in New York City, and you could just take a train to go there. So you could fly a bunch of more effective people there. If your goal is really to help the people there, there's many more effective ways to do it. I think there's a bit of deception here that they want to go to Guatemala and Ghana and Louisiana and Dominican Republic because they want to go there. If they want to go there, but don't say that that's under the guise of helping people more than other ways that could be more cost effective and more effective. We've just started looking at things and saying we just look at the positives and we don't look at the costs, the externalities of flying all around the world. This is how we got to where we are. If we keep doing what we're doing, these excuses that we give are, the environment doesn't care about what we believe we're doing. It believes about what we really do. If we're doing stuff that puts carbon dioxide and methane and jet fuel into the environment, the sea levels will continue to rise. We have to change our behavior if we want to change that. That means you and me. The thing is that, can we imagine not going to Ghana as being, can we still be happy? So luckily for you, we all want to improve our lives. By improving our lives, that means that it's not just about traveling the world. It's about emulating the people that we want to emulate. It's about using our role models as examples to live more like them, because that's what you told me that you wanted to do. Now, people are trying to influence others on the environment. I wouldn't be giving this talk if I thought that people are already doing it very effectively. The thing is that the current ways that I see people trying to lead others is the big ones are guilt and blame and doom and gloom. And I've talked about how we know what's going to happen. I hope I'm not giving you, I don't think I've given you new information that you didn't know about the sea levels and stuff like that. The thing is that, okay, I'll just list a few ways. Guilt, blame, doom, and gloom. People talking about the earth is going to fall apart, society is going to die, stuff like that. Next is education and information. Scientists do this a lot. Schools do this a lot. They give information. These are the facts. And this is what's going to happen. If you read the New York Times, they do a lot of stuff recently on Antarctica. And next is legislation. People trying to pass laws in order to make it impossible to do certain things and change people's behavior, but actually mostly on companies and governments doing things. What I want to be clear about is that everything that has been done so far does not work. For various different reasons, which I'll go to in a second. If we rely on more of the same, we're not going to get this done. Because there have been lots of changes, but the progress that we've made has been negligible compared to the regress that we've done. You know, there have been a few things here and there where we replant a few trees in some places, or the ozone layer is smaller, a few things like that. There's some cap and trade. But compared to the amount of carbon dioxide, methane, and greenhouse gases continuing to go into the environment, it is like nothing, the progress that we've made, especially compared to what we need to happen if we want, say, to keep things under what they agreed to in Paris of a degree and a half or 2 to keep the sea levels from rising. But what we've done is very little in comparison. So I want to talk about each of these ways. Facts, spreading of facts and information. Actually, first let me talk about the doom and gloom. I'm sure you've been in relationships. Has making other people feel guilty worked for you? Have people making you feel guilty, has that worked in the long term? My impression is that it generally doesn't work. It generally makes people not want to listen to you and not want to be around you and lowers your ability to influence. So guilt, blame, doom and gloom, not effective leadership. It's more about people venting. All of these things are more about what people want as opposed to what the people that they're serving want, which is what leadership is really about. Facts don't change your behavior. Very rarely, especially when you're trying to motivate people away from comfort, convenience, and pleasure. The big example I have here is that in this nation, we have probably more knowledge of nutrition and diseases of excess, like heart disease and non-fatty liver disease and diabetes than any time ever before. And we also have the most obesity. Here's this illustrated GIF that shows, I think, from the 1985 to 2010, and you can see it starts with some places under 10 degrees, at under 10% obesity, not even just overweight. And as we go on year by year, we have to keep adding more and more categories. 20%, you'll see 25% in a second, you'll see 30% in a second. And this one goes up to, I think, 2010, so this one is 2015, and you see it's all the way up to 35%. Who knows if it's up to 40%? Yes, any states. So this illustrates that knowing the facts does not change behavior. I'm sure some people prefer to be to be obese, but I think most people don't. They know the facts, they just don't change their behavior. There's lots of other things at play. I'm not saying it's the only thing. It's a very complex issue, but the nation, the genetics have not changed that much in a couple decades. My mentor, Marshall Goldsmith, the #1 rated leadership coach and author and so forth, he says it very clearly. In life, our problem isn't understanding, it's doing. I think most people understand what we want to do, we just don't do it. Facts don't change behavior. So I support these tools when they work, but generally they create resistance, people digging in heels, looking for others to act first. I want to talk about legislation too. Trying to change legislation without popular support is authoritarian. It's autocratic. People, even when they agree with laws, when you force people to do stuff without them having had a say in it, they generally push back. They don't like that. So this is Tim Smith. He is, I think, the first knight that I've ever spoken to, knighted by knight of the British Empire, and he created something called the Eden Project. It's in the southwest of England, and somehow he was walking along and came across a big abandoned coal mine, just a big crater in the earth. Here's a picture of it. Just no life living there. This is what he came across, and somehow got the idea that he was going to make it green and verdant and lush, and he turned it into what I believe is now the most diverse garden in Europe, with geodesic domes and all this stuff. Look at the difference between what it was and what it is. And it's become a major tourist destination, and they're growing. This one is in England, but they're putting ones up in the United States and in China and various places around the world, all around the theme and project of bringing people back in touch with nature. So One time he was in the United States, I think in the Midwest or South, talking with some farmers. And he's talking to them about various farming related issues. And he says, I forget exactly what the details were, but he's getting agreement on everything. Like he'll say, topsoil erosion, that's a big issue. And they say, yes, that is. We got to do something about the erosion of topsoil. And he says, aquifers, we're draining them too quickly. And they're like, yes, that's a big problem. Aquifers, we shouldn't drain them so much. Otherwise we won't be able to sustain. And he says, maybe monocrops, and they're like, yes, that's a big issue. If a virus comes along, it could wipe things out. We got to have diversity in the crops. And he says, climate change. And they go, fuck you. He's like, what happened? Everything was so good. Everything we were agreeing on. So he just listened to them. And for them, what climate change meant to them, when you say climate change, the associations that they make are the government comes in with a bunch of regulations saying what you can and can't do and makes it impossible for them to make their living, destroying family farms. Meanwhile, ConAgra and Monsanto, all the big agribusiness stuff, they can keep doing whatever they want because they got their hooks in with the government. So from their perspective, and by the way, it's not just the government saying this stuff, it's the Democrats in particular. So the guy the people he spoke to, for them, climate change meant it's a way for the Democrats to control their lives and hand over their farms to big business. And in this country, in this democracy, people can vote for whatever they want to, and they vote based on their beliefs, not on yours, not on what you want them to believe, but on what they do believe. And I believe that that's what happens when you legislate without getting popular support. People, you lead them, but not where you think you want to. So they push back. I had a tremendously disillusioning, I was invited to speak at the Department of Earth and Environmental Science at Columbia a little while ago, and I thought, this is going to be great. Some scientists, I was a scientist, I still consider myself, I know a bit of science, and I bet they really would like to learn some leadership stuff, and I teach it, I wrote a book on this stuff. And I went there, and my impression was that their way of motivating, their way of leading was to educate, spreading facts, which is great. I'm all for people knowing more facts, but it doesn't change their behavior. And when I ate at the cafeteria there, and the other thing that they do is to work on passing laws, but again, without popular support. I think because they know that if they go out and talk to people, people push back. People don't want to do what they're suggesting they do. So they give out these facts and they think, you have the facts, you know what to do. If you don't do it, that's on you, not me. You should figure it out, you should know. But facts don't work that way. People don't respond to facts by changing their behavior. It's very rare. That's why the leadership industry exists. That's why Marshall Goldsmith, decades into a great career, it's still what he works on. And they're not changing their behavior. I talked about the guy flying to Australia. They're mostly like that. When I ate at the cafeteria there, I had to produce more garbage because their cafeteria wasn't designed for recycling and reusing stuff than I do in weeks at my own home. So the scientists themselves are not doing this stuff. Leonardo DiCaprio did this movie on Before the Flood, and we've all watched nature shows, right? So every nature show has scenes like these. They're always unique, but here's DiCaprio at Greenland. He's on top of a melting glacier, and here's a shot. This might not be from that movie, but this is like, the polar bears are swimming. Here's a shot from a helicopter, and then here he's in India talking to the Indians who are making. He's in India, right? Here he is here's a shot of the Great Barrier Reef from a helicopter again. Here's the Amazon rainforest again, or Costa Rican rainforest from a helicopter again. Here is with Elon Musk, famous people. And this is what happens in like every nature show. They go to the corners of the earth to show the fires burning in Java where they're putting up palm oil plantations and the Great Barrier Reef and stuff. And I think it's fair for the average person, if they're watching this, I think it's fair for them to say, okay, I don't really know about this stuff, but it sounds plausible. It sounds like it's happening. These guys seem to know more about it than I do. I wonder what I should do. Well, since they know it more than me, I guess I should do what they do. What are they doing? Well, they're flying around the world. They're taking helicopter rides all over the place. I guess that's what I should too. I should do too. I guess that ecotourism, I should fly around. I mean, that's what they're doing. That's what I should do too. It makes sense. I think it's fair for people to conclude that. So this gets to leadership. I don't think that that's effective leadership. I want to talk about one big thing that's influencing me is that a friend of mine a few years ago, we were talking, and I don't know, we were having a drink or something like that. And he says, Josh, I got to run. I got this thing downtown. So I'm like, okay. A little while later, stuff is happening in New York City, which you'll get in a second. And I started hearing people talk about Zuccotti Park and Occupy Wall Street. And it was shortly after my friend went downtown. And I was like, I think he'd mentioned stuff about this. And I said, hey, were you involved with that Occupy Wall Street stuff? And he goes, yeah, I was there before it got big, and I'm helping making it big. And I said, that's amazing. It really looks like it's taking off. It sounds like a really big leadership opportunity. He goes, no. It is not a leadership thing. This is not about a strong central leader. This is about a grassroots, community-based thing it's happening. There's never been anything like it. I thought, all right, let's see what happens. I would have thought, having a leader taking responsibility would be the thing to do. And I think he, like many people, associates leadership with authority, authoritarian, and people telling people what to do, which is not at all what I consider leadership, as I hope I get across here. It's about finding out what people care about and enabling them to do what they want, helping them achieve what they want, not telling them what to do, but enabling them, serving them. In any case, it seemed like it grew a lot to a big worldwide thing, and as far as I could tell, and other people may read it differently, not much happened with it. And different people will learn different things, but my takeaway was that effective change requires leadership. Not leadership like telling people what to do, not people usurping others' power, but empowering others, leadership, helping people find out what they care about and enabling them to do what they want, especially when the alternative is comfort and convenience. It's so easy not to do things. But for people to find out what they really care about, in your case, to find out what role models that you yourself want to emulate, not that I think you should emulate, but that you want to emulate. And if they got there through struggle and challenging themselves, but not through comfort and convenience, then the leadership means enabling you to do these things that are more valuable to you, that you will look back and say, I'm glad that I did that. So leadership, responsibility, accountability, empathy, compassion often mean skipping Flipper and Gidget. And they do mean, so not getting to do things that are easier to do. And it does mean, sometimes you got to go to Washington, D.C. in August and sweat it out. But that's where you get inspired. That's where maybe you can be the one to inspire to do some of the big things that we value. Now, that doesn't mean you have to do hunger fast like Gandhi. It doesn't mean you have to be in jail for 27 years like Mandela. It doesn't mean that you have to make big sacrifices like that. But the thing is that none of these people look back. I doubt a single person who marched in Selma looked back and says, I regret having done that. But you cannot keep doing what you're doing. That is not leadership. That is following. And I think we agree that we have to change our behavior. My big thing to you now, well, I'll get to that in a second. For a while, well, I'll just say it because I alluded to it, is that what looks like sacrifice and deprivation today, from your current way of looking at things, after you do it, and it will require some sacrifice, it will require some transition and taking on challenges, just like the role models that you have. For you to become like them in your way, you'll have to go through that transition, but when you get to the other side, you'll look back and be glad that you did. And you may wish you'd done it earlier. For a long time, we hoped the market and technology and innovation and growth would do it. For a long time, we thought, maybe it's not going to happen. Maybe we'll come up with some solution. And for a long time, it was fair, reasonable to think, let's wait and see. None of those things worked. None of those things are working. Emissions continue to rise. I'll talk about the problems with each of these things. We'd hoped we'd find the science was off. It isn't off. So my question to you so I want to give you guys, actually I want to go back here. No, I'll talk about the market, technology, innovation, growth in a little bit. I want to give you a question on the topic of leadership and climate change. Can you name effective leaders in climate change? I mean the names of human beings who are motivating others to change their behavior, giving them facts without changing behavior, bringing awareness up without changing behavior. Those don't count. If you've watched TED Talks and you say this is a big issue, but you still fly and eat steak and all these so forth, all these things, as much as you ever did before, that person's not count. I would not count that person as a leader. So can you name effective leaders by name in climate change, where leadership means influencing others to act for a common goal, influencing their behavior? Now, I've been asking this question a lot, and if I really had an audience here, I'd probably get the most common answers tend to be none. Most people cannot name a single person that leads. In fact, last time I gave this talk, someone suggested someone who she said was a leader, and I said, "Is this person really changing other people's behavior?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Really changing behavior?" She said, "Yes, absolutely." Since then, I've gotten put in touch with this person, and the person specifically wrote in an email to me, unasked by me, "I am not leading people. I'm not trying to change people's behavior." Okay, so even when I get answers that people insist are people who are changing people's behavior, they say none. Next is Al Gore, who made An Inconvenient Truth. He's a politician. He's going to get some resistance, even no matter how effective he is. And then Leonardo DiCaprio did Before the Flood, which was with Scorsese and Trent Reznor and the guy who did The Cove. Here's with Obama. You saw him with Elon Musk and with lots of big famous people. He's becoming named less as the movie passes, but these are the big names. Now, I'm going to give you a couple answers. I'm going to give you a couple names, and because I've been thinking about this, and I thought, who's changing behavior in this area? Who's moving the needle on carbon dioxide emissions? And then it hit me, and I'm going to give you a couple names, and you're going to be, these names are so clearly the most effective leaders in this area by far. And you're going to go, what? And you're going to say, oh yeah, I guess you're right. And so the big names are the Koch brothers, Donald Trump. And I'm not going to get into politics here. I'm not talking about politics, but if you take all the contributions of all the scientists, we've known about the greenhouse effect for over a century. And, we didn't know that it was going to be, we didn't think we could really affect something on the scale of a planet until a couple decades ago. And it wasn't front page news in the paper of record until the past couple of years. But if you take all the effects of all the scientists, it's like nothing compared to the election of Donald Trump in terms of changing the emissions to what they would have been had this person not done what they did. Now, of course, you're thinking leadership in the other direction, but there is the leadership in this direction is so much greater than the leadership in the direction of reducing carbon emissions. So there's a lot of leadership here, but it's going in the direction most of us disagree with. Started making me think, should I be involved here? So about a year ago, I started, my book was going to come out and it was time to start promoting myself and get myself out there. And I thought one way I could do that is I'm going to start saying, global warming, that's a big issue that people talk about. So I want to get my voice out there. And so I thought maybe I'd spread the word that if you want to get someone speaking about global warming, you should really get someone who's got the following criteria. They have a science background, preferably hard science. They have experience and skills in leadership. They have skills and experience and academic credentials. They have skills and experience in entrepreneurship. Now, of course, I'm describing myself. This is for me to get my foot in the door, my nose under the tent, to get out there. The thing is that in the intervening time, as I thought about more and more about people actually making a difference, not just talking, not just educating without making a difference or raising awareness without changing behavior, and I started realizing that people who didn't have these properties, all of them, they would miss the problem or didn't know how to solve it. So scientists, they go out with a lot of facts and legislation, but as I've said, it doesn't change, and in fact often provokes resistance. A lot of people, especially because reporters keep reporting them as like they overblow it to sell copy, and so it sounds like scientists are all about doom and gloom, even when they're just spreading facts. But even when they're just spreading facts, it's not about changing behavior. They don't know how to influence other people. It's not their field. So we look to them, but they're not leaders. They're not skilled at influencing others, and they never have been. It's very rare that scientists do that. Business people say that the market will solve things, but the tragedy of the commons has almost never been solved by the market. So what is the tragedy of the commons? The tragedy of the commons is when the classic cases in England, there'd be a community and there'd be a field that everyone could use. And let's say they could graze the sheep on the field, and there's 50 people and enough grass for 50 sheep to graze. Then everyone gets one sheep on the field. Sounds great, right? Except each person realizes that, hey, if I put out 2 sheep, I get double the benefit. Yes, in principle, it'll overgraze, and in some long period of time, we may overgraze it and may go down to, we may lose all the grass. But in the meantime, I get double the benefits and only 1/50th the loss. The thing is that what happens is everyone puts out a second sheep. So now there's 100 sheep and it overgrazes, and that's the tragedy of the commons, that capitalism has never been able to solve. Now, there are places here and there where like Central Park is a commons, and in the 70s it was a dust bowl and it was messed up, and we were able to, how did we bring it back into a commons that everybody loves? Mainly through legislation. It's within a city and we have police and we can enforce laws to make sure that people don't do that. Don't overuse it. There are other cases like storefront, in front of storefronts, they tend to be more clean when there's a store because we've privatized certain areas, and when some things are privatized, then people take care of them more. The thing is that there's no effective way to legislate, to regulate and to monitor the oceans and the environment and the air. It's not like Central Park that's all surrounded by New York City. Everyone has access to it, and we can't stop people from dumping and from all these things. We can do our best, but so far we haven't been able to do that. And there are certain problems with trying to get a global police force. Not that even if we could do one. So the tragedy of the commons, the market has not been able to resolve this. And there are very few places where it has been able to, and I'd love to be able to extrapolate from those successes to this area, but not happening so far. Price supports. Governments and markets are unable, in virtually every place in the world, are unable to stop themselves from propping up supports to make gas cheaper, to make meat cheaper, so that we don't reflect the true cost of things. We'd like to say that as fossil fuels get more rare, they should go up in price, and that should get other things to start looking more economical. Yes, that's happening somewhat, but we are nowhere near the cost of what meat really costs, what oil really costs. My taxes are supporting a military protecting a pipeline that I'm not using the oil that other people are. And then there's the other case of very rich people. As long as we have a skewed distribution where people are extremely wealthy, you will always have people who will do things like, pay for a fishing boat to catch the very last of some type of fish and overfish. And what happens is that when you have people out on this long tail, you get behavior that the market, if you believed, a market doesn't really fix. So some people will continue to pay for stuff that will wreck the environment. Technologists. Technology exacerbates an effect that systems thinkers call overshoot and collapse. So here's a little picture of overshoot and collapse, is that, say there's a carrying capacity of the planet, the population keeps growing, as the population keeps growing, the consumption of resources keeps growing, and eventually that goes over the carrying capacity of the planet, which the science that I look at says that we are over that now, that we're drawing down on natural resources. We're fishing beyond what the oceans could sustain. We're using fossil fuels that are not replaceable. And to me, it's very clear. Now, technology can increase the carrying capacity by enabling us to use resources that wouldn't be otherwise. But another big effect of technology is that it enables us to keep fishing deeper and deeper and getting more fish than we could before, and feeding people that we couldn't before, using like the Green Revolution uses a lot of oil to make a lot of food, and now we have people that when the oil runs out, we can't keep feeding. So a big effect of technology is that it makes the overshoot great. It extends the period that we can go in overshoot, but then makes the collapse afterward faster. And so here's a graph that's going to be kind of complicated to look at, but this is a systems thinker's graph of, it's a lot of stuff going on here. And I'm not going to go into the details, but in 1972, they wrote a book called Limits to Growth, and they looked at how much non-renewable resources were remaining, food per capita, services per capita, that's basically how well life is you're living, industrial output, global pollution, and population. And in 1972, they projected a lot of different scenarios. And of the many scenarios, this is the one that seems to fit most, which is what they said would be the most common one. And you see that the population here goes up to a certain amount and then starts collapsing and starts dropping a lot. That's a property of overshoot and collapse. Now, this is a very simplified model, but that's the principle of overshoot and collapse. And technology extends the overshoot and makes deeper and faster collapses. In the short run, it looks good, but in the long run, it doesn't. And technologists, I have very rarely come across ones who get the big picture. economists, they tend to believe that growth will solve a lot of issues, but growth, economic growth in particular, requires population growth. I've never seen an economist, I very rarely see economists who look at steady state economies. And so they, again, it's another effect of growth exacerbating overshoot and collapse. And I started to wonder if maybe my criteria, remember those criteria of having a background in leadership and entrepreneurship and academic credentials and having a science background, maybe they weren't just nice to have. Maybe they were essential. That's not to say that they're enough. They may be essential, but the people who didn't have all of them didn't seem to get the full picture, and were proposing solutions that were not going to solve the problem, and in many cases would exacerbate it. So they might not be enough, but maybe the thing is, how many people have at least these criteria? I started looking around, maybe not that many. Maybe, not to say I'm the only one, but maybe if I'm one of the few, maybe my voice is necessary. Maybe without the voice of people like that and the actions of people like that, maybe we don't have a chance. Maybe even with those voices, we don't have a chance. But I started to feel like maybe I feel a sense of responsibility, because I got to tell you, to throw your hat in the ring to become a leader is like, you're like, look, I'm a leader with my classrooms and things like that, but this is on a big scale. This is a global scale, certainly a national scale. That's opening yourself up for a lot of criticism and a lot of pushback and a lot of people attacking you and so forth. Do I want to do that? Like, at first I just wanted to give a couple talks, but now I'm thinking maybe I want to become a leader and, you know, follow in the footsteps of my leaders. What I'm saying to you, for you to think of, that's what started hitting me. I started feeling responsible. Maybe it's not possible, but maybe I would still have to try. Now, what I'm not saying is, I'm not about sharing data like scientists. I'm all for it, but that's not what I'm doing. Other people are doing it, and I want to support them. I want to augment what they're doing. I want to make their job easier and make them more effective. I'm not making a moral issue. This is not about right or wrong. This is not about good or bad. Not my message. My message is, you have people that you want to emulate. You have role models. You have values. You want ways to improve your life, and this is your opportunity to do it. You can let it pass you by. You can watch Flipper. You can watch Gidget. I'm sure they're great movies. But if you sweat it out on the DC Mall, if you take steps and put yourself out there, I think it'll be worth it. This is what I'm doing. I'm taking this risk. I'm not giving you 10 tips to reduce your contribution. That stuff is out there. This information is out there. If you're not getting it, if people aren't getting it, it's not because it's not out there. If someone wants tips on how to reduce global warming, they can go online and find it pretty quick. They can find as many tips as they want. They can do as much as they want, but they're not. And you're not. I mean, you're here, but most people are not. And if they're not doing that, that's not giving people more information who aren't acting on the information they already have. Giving 10 tips to people who already have tips but aren't acting on them will not make them act on them. What I want to do is I'm here to change people's beliefs, to get them to recognize their values and to realize that this is for yourself, will make your life better. This is your chance, the chance that you have waited for to rise to your potential, to become the person you want to be. It's there for you. I don't want to do what hasn't worked. What works in leading people, not just managing through authority, not authoritarian measures. You have role models, you have values, you have passions. We all do. Either you're perfect or you want to increase these things. By the way, this is the technique of my book, not to plug my book, but this is what I put in my book, and it's been a bestseller. It works. It's to connect these values, these passions to the task, so that when you do that for someone, when a leader connects someone's values to a task, it imbues that work with meaning, and they do it for themselves, not for others. This works on a small scale, one-on-one in business. It works for leading yourself. I believe it will work here. And I believe that's what people are not doing. Sometimes you'll have people say, do it for your children or for future generations, but I'm saying do it for yourself. I don't think that's being selfish at all, because we're a social species and we care about each other. We're empathetic, and it's helping others, being compassionate, being empathetic, and acting responsibly and acting with accountability. It improves your own life. So do it for yourself. That's my goal. Keep in mind, you will be helping others as well. It would be nice to live in a world where manna fell from the skies and you could eat whatever you want, as much as you want, anytime you wanted, and would not have any consequences. But it doesn't. And factory farming, there's a huge debt zone out where the Mississippi goes into the Gulf of Mexico. Topsoil is depleting. We know the issues. I don't have to tell you that. We do not live in a world where you can do these things and you somehow don't have an effect on these things. It would be nice to live in a world where planes don't burn jet fuel, where there are solar-powered planes. One day there might be, but now there isn't. And if you think that somehow, because someday in the future there'll be solar planes, which maybe there will, maybe there won't, that doesn't change that when you get in an airplane, no matter how much you like going to some place, no matter how good you think it makes you feel, there are externalities that you want others to take care of, and if you want them to change but not yourself, you're in the wrong talk. They do burn jet fuel. When aquifers, topsoil, it would be nice to live in a world where aquifers, topsoil, and rainforests regenerated as fast as we use them up. A football field per second, I think, or per minute of the Amazon rainforest. Unbelievable. But they don't regenerate. It would be nice to live in a world where plastic decomposed fast. I just did an article about how the most polluted place in the world is an island in the middle of the Pacific, Henderson Island. It's like thousands of miles from any continent. And it's covered, the beaches are covered with plastic and junk. It would be nice to live in a world where when a baby was born, the planet somehow got bigger to make extra space and create extra resources for them. For all of human history, we could always expand into new places. We can't do that anymore. We're everywhere. We're past the carrying capacity. If we're not past the carrying capacity, I'll talk about the carrying capacity in a minute. It would be nice to live in a world where science wasn't clear and we could wait. We've waited and waited and waited. It's now. I mean, it's past now, in my opinion. But we don't live in that world. We live in a world where plastic is in the middle of the Pacific, where babies being born mean there's less resources for everyone else. The science is clear. We live in a world where the Republican mayor of Miami speaks out about global warming, where we fight over oil and water. I've seen analyses that say what's going on in Syria is a lot about water rights, where we project more plastic than fish in the ocean. Think of the size of the Pacific. The planet is 3/4 water, and we're going to have more plastic than fish. And once that happens, it's going to keep becoming more that way. All right, carrying capacity. What is it? Has anyone thought of what the carrying capacity means? Like, let's say we're below it, and we could get it up to 10 billion or 11 billion or 15 billion or something like that. What does it mean to be living at the carrying capacity? If you think it means everyone has lots of stuff and there's lots of resources to go around, then we're not at the carrying capacity, because then we could put more people in. We have to keep people, to get to the carrying capacity, it means keeping people, putting more and more people in until the next person you put in causes someone else to die. That's the carrying capacity. I mean, you might squibble a little bit about with the definition, but that's basically what it means. It means it's full. What does it also mean? It means there are no cheetahs. Not anything else that competes with us for resources. They're gone. There's no elephants. The only animals that are going to be around are ones that don't compete with us. They're ones that we can't get rid of. It's going to be cockroaches and rats and pigeons. That's what the earth is going to be full of. That plus some sparrows and us. No cheetahs, no Great Barrier Reef. Those things are gone when we're at the carrying capacity. And that's what we're doing so far. What we're doing. Okay, Manhattan. I love Manhattan. This is where I live. This is my home. I love living here. And when people talk about history, human history, or like why the city is so great, I think of MoMA. I think of the Met. I think of the Metropolitan Opera House and Carnegie Hall. And I think of Columbia, where I went, and education and all of this amazing culture and the architecture and things like that. Okay, that's some nice stuff to think about. But from another perspective, you know, this is what it was before humans. This is a picture from what it would have looked like in 1690. Look at all those trees. The skyline isn't as big. I mean, we filled in a lot of stuff out there. And from another perspective, if you look at what humans have done, everywhere we've gone where there's been resources, we expand into areas that were in general equilibrium, and we would go in and we just use up the resources. And where we've been, we turn them into tourist traps. And yeah, I love looking at that city, but you know, we got the Grand Canyon, we got Central Park. We got to work really hard to protect those places. It wouldn't be surprising to me if, you know, when oil is found there, it's finished. When tourism gets bigger, tourism gets bigger. It's really hard to keep, like, this is one of the things, from a certain perspective, that's what we're doing. I want to give you some other pictures. It's like Iraq. This is like, these are pictures of what we've done, what we're doing. It doesn't have to be that way. And, you know, so this is I think what a lot of people think is like, what if we don't change it all and something magical happens? That's not leadership. That's what most people are doing. That's why this is funny. So I want to talk about two experiments that I did that kind of moved the needle for me, that pushed me into taking this leadership role. So one is avoiding packaged and fiber removed foods. What I noticed was that my garbage had a lot of, like, I wanted to create less garbage. I want to, fill the landfills less than I would otherwise. I can't change anyone else's behavior, but I want to take responsibility for my effect on the world. So I said to myself, what if I just don't get any food with packaging for a little while, see what happens? And I sat on this idea for a couple months because, I don't eat meat, and every now and then you get people who are, they want to tell you how to eat and they want to challenge you, and, if you're consistent and stuff. And it gets kind of annoying to be in these arguments. Although I've learned not to get in those arguments so much. One of the big things about maturation was, realizing that other people see things differently. And I also didn't know how I would do it. Could I do it? Could I go for a week without packaging? And of course, people live for most of, Homo sapiens were around for a long time without any packaging. So somehow they were able to do it. And after about 6 months of having this idea, I finally said, wait a minute, all this planning, all this thinking, all this awareness, all this preparing for for how to make it work for other people, I'm not starting. I said, it starts now. Right now, I'm going to go 1 week without packaging. Look, I'm not going to die. If I only have water for the next week, I'll make it. But of course, I can figure it out. And so only when I started doing it did the transition begin. All the planning wasn't adding up to any action. So what happened? I started, I would go to the store and I'd say, all right, I can't buy all this stuff. I basically had to buy fresh fruits and vegetables. There's a bulk food store near me where I had plenty of plastic bags. So I'm not getting any new stuff. I would just go and refill it with beans, dried legumes and nuts. And it has become the most delicious part of my life. Now, I went through a transition actually of not really knowing what to do because I didn't know how to cook a lot of stuff and rely on it, because I had a lot of fake meat from Whole Foods and Trader Joe's, which, by the way, those are now wastelands to me. That stuff is packaged central. It's all about marketing. I mean, they do have some produce at Trader Joe's and actually some pretty good produce at Whole Foods, but the farmer's market is my home now. Anyway, I also did this farm share, which meant that every week for about half the year, I go to this place on 16th Street. I go to the drop-off point and I pick up fresh vegetables picked from the farm, just outside the city, something like 24 hours before. So they're delicious and fresh, but I'm also getting a lot of things. I don't know what they are. So I went through this period of not knowing what to do, but I said, I'm not going to waste anything. And so I went through a long period of how to put it, eating a lot of steamed vegetables or maybe fried in garlic and onion that I really didn't know what I was doing. And so there was this transition that was really unpleasant. I was eating bland, yucky food. And look, I like vegetables. I like steamed vegetables, but not all the time. But the result was that my food has now become delicious, convenient, more convenient than ever. I don't go to restaurants anymore. I mean, I'll go if I really have to, but basically I don't go. And I'm saving money. This is I can't believe people say that eating healthy costs more, because I'm spending a lot less money and eating a lot more food in volume. By calories, not. But it's really delicious. I've never eaten better by what I care about. Better. What you care about might be different. I don't know. That's your business. But for me, it's better. And it's community, because I invite people over all the time now. And we go shopping together. I'm telling about farms, and I'm meeting the farmers, and I'm going to the farm. It's like the highlight of my summer is when they organize this bus trip, and I go to take a bus up to the farm, and I walk around and I see the plants growing and so forth. The next thing was about a year and a half ago, I was in Europe, and it hit me finally of how much pollution, I read this thing that said that a flight across, New York, LA and back, is roughly a year of driving. I didn't realize it was that much. And when I realized that, I thought, I can't do this. Yes, I like to fly, and I expect that I'll keep flying over the course of my lifetime, but I'm going to go for 1 year without flying. And when I came back, I said, all right, it starts when I get back. And that was March 22nd, 23rd, 2016. And so now that makes me, I think I'm in month 14 or 15 now of not flying. And look, I knew that I was going to be releasing my book in that time. It's pretty useful to have a book release, to have a tour when your book comes out. This was not an easy decision for me. I travel a lot. But I said, I'm going to do it. And there was a transition when, people are saying, go to this, go to that. I got invited to talk in LA, in Poland, and that set things up for England. And I was struggling with all these things. And I was looking into flying, even riding my bike to Phoenix. And okay, let me talk about the carbon footprint. This is New York, LA, and back. If you go to New York, LA, and back, it's 1.5 tons of carbon dioxide. The maximum amount from the Paris Agreement that a person should produce per year to halt climate change is 2 tons. So that one round trip flight, you're almost at the limit. That's flying coach. Now that's small compared to what an EU citizen produces in a year, but this is like a few hours. All right, what if you fly first class? Then it's 2.9 tons because you allocate this is not how much the plane puts out. This is your part of the plane. And when you take up more space on the plane, you're allocated more of the output. So this is, you go first class, you're over. This is if you're flying to Paris coach from New York. So that puts you over the limit too. Just one trip there to Europe and back. Fly to Shanghai around the world, coach, you're way over the limit. If you're talking about other people should change their behavior and you're doing this, you're not leading yourself. This is if you're flying business class. This is if you're flying first class. You're way over. In one round trip flight, you're doing what the average citizen does an entire year. This is what got me to say, for 1 year, how hard is it not to fly? Not to fly. One of the great advances of humankind, to be able to do this at all. For most of human history, people didn't think it was possible. I should be able to make it a year. So I made it a year. And in fact, in that year, things changed a lot. At first, I thought this is really hard. I'm missing out on all these things. But then you go through this period of transition and then you realize, let me see if I talk about what I do. Okay, so it wasn't easy. There was a book launch, all these steamed vegetables. Yeah, so when I don't say, I'm not going to fly, and in the time that I would have been away, I'll just sit in my room and stare at the wall. Of course, I go out and I do lots of different things. So, for example, one of the things I couldn't do was, I don't know about you, but I love tropical fruit. It's like my favorite stuff to put in my mouth. Pineapples, durians, mangoes, chikus, things like that. Most of the stuff you can't get here, especially if you're not getting packaged stuff. So it wasn't my rule to say it could only be local stuff, but if you're eating only local stuff, in New York, in the winter, this past winter is when things really turned around, when things started getting really delicious, maybe last summer. Winter in New York City, if you're only buying local stuff, unpackaged stuff from farmers markets, it means rutabagas, kohlrabi, turnips, parsnips, potatoes, carrots, onions, beets, the root vegetables, cabbage. Now, I don't know anybody who says, given the choice between a mango and a turnip, I think most people pick the mango. What I found out over this winter was that because I forced myself into leading myself, I've made more delicious food than ever. I do not miss this tropical stuff. These turnips in what I'm making are tremendously delicious. People come over and they're like, this stuff is amazing. I've never tasted food this good. And I'm like, yeah, I just bought it from a farm that's right around here. And it's I do not miss the stuff. So when I say avoid this, avoid that, it sounds negative. It sounds like I'm not doing things, but it's what I replace them with. That's what really counts. I'm not saying don't do things and just die. I'm saying don't do things and replace it. Because this is a later point, but I'm saying that we live in a world of material limitation, but not emotional limitation. There's no limit on the happiness and joy and emotional reward and friendship that you can create. And I put to you that flying around the world often gets in the way of those things. Because people live for tens of thousands of years. Homo sapiens lived for hundreds of thousands of years without flying, without food packaging. And I bet many of them were happier than us today. And I put to you that if every time you hear about like someone who went to Machu Picchu, you think, I got to go to Machu Picchu. I put to you that kind of craving might be undermining your happiness, might be undermining you living according to the values that you want. As far as saying no, Rosa Parks said no. Was that negative, or was it opening up ways of achieving freedom, justice, and equality? So if it sounds negative, I put to you, it's totally not that way for me. This whole idea of it used to be that people would say heavier than air flight was impossible. It's kind of funny because birds and bugs that can fly are heavier than air, but people didn't think humans could do it. They didn't think it was possible for basic physics. Now a lot of people say it would be impossible for me to go without flying for a year. Impossible They've so twisted and distorted their view of possibility that what they're saying is like they don't want to. That's not impossible. They're not going to die. They just don't want to face it. They like Ben and Jerry's, and they're trying to say that it's healthy because they just want to eat it. They're just rationalizing a decision that they're making, not because it's what makes their life better, but because it's the easier, comfortable thing to do. So the results for me are that when I think of climate change and changing my behavior to become more consistent with, to reduce my contribution, the top things I think of is delicious, convenient, saving money, and community. Those are the things that I associate with changing my behavior. Now, it wasn't like that in the middle. I had to go through this transition period of feeling like I was missing out and eating a lot of steamed vegetables that were really kind of bland to me. But compare this with the farmers that Tim Smith met. With the fuck you. Totally different. But you have to go through this transition period. And it's not about other people, imposing stuff on you. It's about you doing it for yourself. Things that no matter how many sites you want to travel to see, no matter how many cultures you visit, how many cuisines you taste, it's only a fraction of what's out there. And as long as you can't see everything, why not enjoy where you are as much as you can? That's what we're missing out on. Because in today's world, turnips are more exotic than mangoes, because I can get a mango on the street corner and turnips are kind of hard to come by and people don't know how to cook them. And yeah, you can go to, I love the cuisine in Thailand and I can't get it like they're here, but there's amazing stuff you can do with fresh stuff here. That's amazing without flying all over the place. And I had no idea. And so traveling around the world, getting other people to do stuff for you is keeping yourself from leading yourself and keeping you from discovering what you can discover. So here's just, this is to me, this used to look, I think for a lot of people, this looks like variety and convenience. Maybe to some people it does. It certainly has lots of colors. But to me, if you don't eat packaged food, all of this is a wasteland. I wouldn't touch it. This to me is just a landfill waiting to happen. It probably is a lot more landfill stuff than food. And what my life has become more of is this. To me, this is really, looks delicious. The color's a little bit off, but I look at this stuff and I'm like, that would be delicious in the way that this stuff would be terrible. I haven't touched any of this stuff in a long time. It doesn't even look like, it's like something some conglomerate does to you. This is delicious. Look at this. There's no packaging in these. This has some crates, I guess, but stuff that you wouldn't throw away that you keep reusing. What do you have? We have carrots and turnips or radishes and all these different things. This to me is variety. More variety. I know how to cook all of these things. Before I didn't. This to me, so much more flavor. And a bit of outdoors. This could look monotonous. This is accessible by train from New York City. Maybe not this. But this stuff is all very close and easy to find. All right, I got to pause because I got to go meet someone. All right, so you probably can't tell that I paused, but it's about an hour later, so sorry. Restarting? Okay. So I was just talking about how I went through these experiments. And so I want to talk about that, changing my diet was not an easy thing. I spent most of my life, since I started living on my own, I always had pretzels and chips in my cupboard, always. And like these Snyder's of Hanover were the ones that I liked the most. Obviously this is packaged, so I'm not getting these anymore. But, I spent most of my life, I'd come home, I'd have a beer. I'd always have chips and pretzels. Ice cream. When I was in graduate school, I remember I always got ice cream. And I knew that it wasn't that healthy. And I had this weird feeling that I couldn't stop myself from buying it. And then when I'd buy it, I'd feel kind of weird about getting it. But the thing was that then when I would eat it, I would feel better. And that feeling of helplessness was something that happens when I do things that I really don't want to do, but I can't stop myself from doing it. And one of the big changes, especially with this change in my diet of not eating packaged food, was that now I eat as much almost as much as I can sometimes. This picture here is of the farm where I get my deliveries from. And these are eggplants. I had no idea what eggplants look like when they're growing. And so I got this great discovery of this. And I've replaced this feeling of helplessness, of feeling powerless, of feeling like out of control, with joy of really it's hard for me to describe this. And this joy of subtlety and nuance and complexity of fresh fruits and vegetables that I just never had before. and this unbelievable sweetness and crunch and texture and all these parts of food that I never really paid attention to before. Because when other people do stuff for you and you just choose what's easy and comfortable, you don't really get to explore and discover all these other things that happen when you discover it for yourself, when you take a leadership position, even if you're just leading yourself. Another thing that happened to me when I did this, went a year without flying, now 14, 15 months. And I want to say flying is, it's a major contributor. It's not the biggest contributor. It's one thing that I realized that I could control unilaterally. I could choose not to fly. Anyone can choose not to get in an airplane. So I'm not proposing to you that you not fly for a year. I'm just saying this is one thing that I did because I could, and I was curious what would happen. And in the end, major changes happened that only came through experience. There's no way that anyone could have, through reading a book or thinking about this or planning it without doing it, could have come up with these things. That, when I talk to people about not flying for a year, people come back with the craziest responses that are patently specious. These are fatuous responses, and they know it. One thing is, planes were going to fly anyway. As if the law of supply and demand, as if them spending their money on this didn't make a difference. Of course, you buying a ticket makes a difference. Of course, you being on the flight increases demand, which will lead to increases in supply. The laws of supply and demand don't stop just because you want to go to Machu Picchu. I need to, and then they have this reason that if this reason were enough, then no one would ever stop flying. And they agree that other people should fly less, but not themselves. So it's always something like, I don't know, a sick relative or some relative or something like their job depends on it. Yes, I'm not saying there's no transition period. There is a transition period when things that today look necessary, look impossible to do without, turn out after you experience it, you find out, just like I found out, yeah, I'm not going to die if I don't get packaged food. There's alternatives to the stuff that I was getting. Turns out the alternatives are much better, at least for me. And same with all this flying, is that when I didn't fly, I found out, things that I thought were necessary aren't necessary. And when you find out that something's not necessary for your life, for your happiness, you find out ways of making yourself happier otherwise. There's this huge belief out there that airplanes one day are going to be solar. Now, as a physicist, I don't know. It could go one way, it could go the other. But I tell you this, any plane that anyone I know is getting into is not solar. It's spewing jet fuel out into the environment, and a lot of it. You saw the numbers from before. So people are lying to themselves that somehow, because some future plane is going to be solar, that somehow this plane is not polluting. And if you really want future planes to be solar, it's going to happen a lot faster if you stop taking jet planes. And then they don't, this was me as well, but they act as if they don't know, or they don't know how much it pollutes. But the thing is, the information is out there. If they don't know, it's not because it's hard to find out. I think in a lot of cases it's because they don't want to find out. Because if they find out, they're going to have to do what I did, which is take a long, hard look at what they're doing and either change their behavior or tell themselves a story why it's okay when they know that it's not. And so that's the next thing, is that they dispel this responsibility and accountability. They say it's one big thing they do is they push back and they ask me if I'm vegetarian or something like that, as if that was relevant to their behavior. So they're not leading. They're going the opposite of leading themselves. And in any other area of life, they get the importance of accountability and responsibility. But, it's tough. When you believe one thing and you do another, you got to tell yourself something to sleep at night. And when someone goes up against that, they're going to push back. So this is not what my talk is about. I'm not trying to convince you to do stuff. I'm telling you my experience when I saw that. The big thing, and I don't know if I'll get pushback from you guys on this one, so I'm going to try to be very clear. This is just my impression. This is what I saw in my words. And maybe it's different for other people, and I'm not talking about you. But the people I talk to, it's like they'll say things like this. Someone I know went to Costa Rica, and it's so beautiful. How can you expect me not to go to Costa Rica? I have to go. I want to go to Costa Rica. And it's this entitled, privileged perspective. Entitled, like, all that matters is, like, there's no second issue. There's no other issue other than I want to go. And because I can afford it, there's no second thought about it. Which is, I mean, I feel like the people who run the steel mills and pumping them into the Great Lakes, a while ago, polluting, that they were probably thinking the same thing. I can, so why not? There's no law against it. Other people have to deal with that problem, not me. And being at NYU, American universities today are so into privilege. They throw this term around like candy to like silence other people. And yeah, I'm a blue-eyed white guy talking about privilege, but I don't know if people realize how, I don't use the term that much, but if you're going to say, if you live in a time, you have no idea how internal combustion engines work, you have no idea how aerodynamics work, and yet you're able to take an airplane and fly all around the world and not think twice about the other people paying for the cleanup. It's like, it's such a different perspective. I don't know if how this is coming out. I'm trying to be judgmental, but it's amazing how much people who will say other people should account for their externalities do not look at their own externalities, and when faced with it, just they don't like it. Okay, there are no solar planes. Maybe there will be in the future, but there aren't now. The planes fly because people pay for tickets. People know how supply and demand works. Even when they're saying the plane would have flown anyway, they know how supply and demand works. And if not, those planes wouldn't fly if no one was going on them. This to me, it feels like people who don't want to eat junk food, but saying junk food is healthy, or at least not that unhealthy, because it tastes good. And they rationalize a reason why it's okay. I see a lot of that. It's really tough to get people to change their behavior when what they're changing from is comfort and convenience. What I want to do is create a world of abundance per capita, where each person, if you take a flight, or if you have more kids than average, somewhere else in the world, if you take the flight, there's going to be some extra trees growing, and maybe someone else doesn't want to have kids, so you can have more kids, stuff like this. Right now, we're not there. As far as I can tell, all the data that I look at points to, not all the data, but the data that I find compelling points to we are at overshoot, that we are drawing on unrenewable resources, and the renewable resources we're using faster than they can replenish, and that if we keep living like we are living, we will hit a collapse. So this future world, I think we'd have to be well below the carrying capacity. Now, that doesn't mean people have to go out of their way to die. Far from it. Because for better or for worse, we're all, as far as I can tell, we're all going to die anyway, so you just have to keep the population from growing so much. But is this the solution I'm proposing? I'm not really sure. I'm at the early stages of influencing people to get to where we can talk about possible solutions. But I envision a world where we're well below the carrying capacity of the planet, so there's lots of resources for everybody. And most of human history, we've been that way. For now, I propose thinking about, consider flying less. Consider flying a lot less. Partly because of the pollution, partly to discover how much more there is to life. How much of your traveling is compulsion? How much of it is chasing, what's the word? Craving, and how much of it could be satisfied with, I live in New York City. I can get a lot of diversity just by taking the subway. And you can probably get, wherever you are, you can probably do something similar. And if you live in a place, like I chose to live in New York City because I love it. Those are my values. I like diversity. If you don't like diversity, I hope you chose to live in a place where you get what you want without having to leave all the time. If you live in a world, if you've created an environment for yourself where your sanity or something depends on you leaving all the time, I put to you that the solution is, I think you'll solve it more effectively by not requiring that. Look, you're living your life, I'm living mine. I don't know if what I'm saying resonates with you or is generating pushback, but I think this is an opportunity for growth, because most of human history, people did not have airplanes and were nonetheless able to be happy. So consider driving less. These are major contributions. These are the things that cause a lot of greenhouse gases to go into the environment, is transportation, eating red meat. If you think your flights aren't hurting others, I believe, push back on this if you want, that you're masking your lack of empathy with ignorance in order to say, I don't want to care about them, so here's why it's okay. The more that I research this stuff, and I would love to fly. I really miss Paris. I love the food in in Bangkok. But every time I research it, I want to find ways to get there. And I find that the stuff saying that it's not a big deal, I don't find compelling. Meanwhile, I'm finding out that turnips and radishes can be incredibly delicious. So the greenhouse effects, whether you're knowledgeable or not. Now listen, one of the things I am saying that the Earth is materially limited. We have finite amounts of fossil fuels, and we have a finite atmosphere to put the stuff into, and there's fish that are being depleted from the ocean and stuff like that. I'm saying that the Earth is materially limited, but I'm not saying that we are limited in happiness or friendship or emotional reward or joy or sort of satisfaction and things like that. I believe that some dependence on externalities is causing us to reduce our abilities to make ourselves happy. Because I think if you look back in time, if you look at the great people in history who looked at happiness and things like that, like Aristotle, Plato, or Buddha, or Lao Tzu, or Jesus, or Moses, or, I think that they didn't fly. So the only limitation on this happiness, I think, comes through ourselves, our own limitations. And I think making our happiness and our friendship and things like that depend on external things decreases our ability to create these things in our lives. So I think the experiments that I did for myself, I think they would work for others as well, enabled me to increase these things: happiness, friendship, emotional reward. This is why Thoreau, I don't know if you've read Civil Disobedience, but why Thoreau was happier in jail when out of jail meant supporting slavery and supporting a war that he didn't support. So the material situation is not the whole picture. The transition will challenge you. I'm not saying it's easy. It was challenging for me. Going without packaged food is not the hardest thing in the world. Not traveling is not the hardest thing in the world, although lots of people say these things are impossible. They're not. I had a lot of steamed vegetables I'd never heard of, but I came out the other side loving these things. The thing is, I didn't accept eating bland forever. If you listen to me and think, yeah, I'll take that on, I'll try to challenge myself, I'll go for a year without flying, 6 months without flying, maybe one trip I'll skip and I'll stay around and see what happens. It's what will you do instead? I'm not saying give up. I'm saying you have the potential to grow in the way that your heroes did. Those things became my best food. And my life increased the amount of delicious, convenient, saving money and community, the exact opposite of what people, and certainly I would have expected. I didn't think it would be more delicious, but it is. I had to act. I had to do these things to make these happen. I had to stop what I was doing before in order to open up the possibility for new things. I had to do these things, not just talk about them. And if you wanted to do it, if you want to go for some time without packaged food, or some time without eating steak, or something like that, you're not going to die. Even if you find out that you don't like it and you say, well, Josh had this thing on leadership. I tried it out. It didn't work. All you have to do is not do something for a little while. It's not that big of a deal. Give it a shot. But try to see what you can replace others. Think of what you would do otherwise. Don't think of just saying no. Think of what you're saying yes to. And that yes may be not taking the bus, and maybe having to walk instead of taking the bus, as they did in Montgomery for a year. But in the end, then there's equality on the bus, and they got justice and equality. We're not done yet. Got a long way to go on that one, but we've come a long way. Yeah, as I said, Homo sapiens lived for years without packaging and planes, for hundreds of thousands of years. They still found ways to be happy. Many of them, I think, were happier than us today. In today's world, mangoes, I can get a mango on almost any street corner in New York. Turnips, not so easy. Mangoes are less exotic than turnips in today's world. And if you think you're going to get exotic by going to other countries, staying in hotels and things, you can get equally exotic without ever leaving. We want different cultures. People want to go and find out what it's like in other places. But we put our grandparents in homes and don't spend time with people from different ages, and they lived different lives as people in other places, and often in many cases. They lived through the Depression, they lived through World War II, they lived through Vietnam, they saw hippies come and go and things like that. And a lot of times if you go to other places in the world today, they live very similar to us today. They're singing Gangnam Style all over the world. So in this year, for example, one thing, She doesn't like me talking about it this way, but I have this friend, Frances Hesselbein, who's 100 years old. Don't tell her I said this. But I got to know her, and I got a relationship with her that I've learned and grown from and gotten to see perspective that I never would have otherwise. In part because I was here, not traveling all over the world. So my gift to you, not to tell you what to do, and if it sounds like I was, yes, I recommend you try some of the things I did, but I'm not telling you exactly what to do, but a new perspective, which I've talked about before. Most people associate decreasing pollution with deprivation and sacrifice. They do these two calculations. They say, people my age and older, they say, let's see, they'll read something that says, by the year 2050, some big disaster is going to happen. It's going to be really horrible. The shit's going to hit the fan. Sorry if I cursed. And they think, okay, so me, I was born in 1971, so 2050, I'll be 79 years old. Wow, that sounds like a big problem for someone. Probably not me, but for someone. And so a lot of us, and by the way, people my age and older, that's pretty much everyone who's a CEO or a leader in, it's a government, a judge or a legislator or a president or a governor. Basically, they're my age and older. There's a few who are younger, but mostly not. And so they think this is a big issue, but not for me. I hope someone else solves it. And the other big one is it's a hot summer day. It's really hot. You want to turn on the air conditioner, and you live in a place and you know that your power comes from coal. So and by the way, this could be eating steaks or it could be traveling. There's lots of different things. It's where you say, if I do this, it's going to pollute. If I don't, maybe it won't. But if I do it, if I turn on the air conditioner, yes, I'll pollute, but I'll be more comfortable. And if I don't pollute, I'll be uncomfortable. But if I turn it on, if a billion other people don't also make this change, it's not going to make a difference. And as long as, I don't want to be the chump. I don't want to be the loser that has to deal with the heat when everyone else is more comfortable. If we're all going to go down, at least I want to be comfortable doing it. And so people conclude, why should I do it? This is the tragedy of the commons. Or as I put it, everybody cares about the environment until they want to see the Eiffel Tower. And so people conclude, I'll just keep doing what I was doing. Even people who agree. Now, some people may disagree with the science. That's another story. That's another talk. But even among people who agree with the science and believe people should change, they don't. This is complacency. This is the opposite of leadership. And this is even among people who are in my world who are specifically studying to learn leadership or have it as an interest or entrepreneurship and taking initiative and responsibility. So the two solutions that they come up with are not my problem and tragedy of the commons. So we haven't solved the tragedy of the commons. We haven't isolated in some cases where we can regulate, where we can enforce laws, the regulation, or where it's small enough communities that everyone can know each other, or where it's privatization. But those things don't apply with the environment. Those things don't apply with the oceans and the air. The Pacific Ocean is really big. It's a lot bigger than Central Park. And people who say, well, we solve these things. One by one, we'll solve all these things. Somebody chopped down the last tree on Easter Island. And there's lots of cases of where there were societies that were flourishing. And the population, when the Europeans got to Easter Island, was 10% of what it was before. 90% of the people couldn't replace themselves. It's happened before. It could happen again. Is it going to happen? I don't know. I hope it doesn't. I'm looking for information that wouldn't, because I don't want to do this any more than anyone else does. But it didn't. There are many cases where we were not able to solve this. So if you say, they have to change, but I have family to visit, my job demands it, I like steak too much, what I'm telling you is not you're doing something wrong. I don't know the answer, but you are holding yourself back. If you believe that you should change, that people should change their behavior, then you are holding yourself back from becoming the hero, reaching your potential, the hero that you want to be, the potential that you know that you could reach. You are holding yourself back from becoming the person that you could become, from emulating the people that you want to emulate. Yes, you're not going to watch Gidget. You're going to miss Flipper. You're going to go out on a hot summer day, but you're not going to regret it. From emulating your heroes, your role models, from what they worked, fought, and maybe died for. This is for you to practice. So from one perspective, ahead of time, before you do it, you might say, I don't want to go sweat on a hot summer day in Washington, D.C. It's like subtropical there. It's really horrible. But from another perspective, it's attending I Have a Dream. And you can be a leader in this movement because there is not leadership in this area. I went online and I searched leadership in the environment. And my post from a week and a half ago came up number 3. So maybe I'm wrong, there's no demand. But I believe a lot of people want to change their behavior, and they want to make their behavior consistent with their beliefs. And that's what leaders do, is they make that connection for people, make them feel that they're not alone, make them feel that their actions have meaning and purpose, and they're part of a community. And that's what you can do. So the perspective is this, that what looks to you now like sacrifice and deprivation, when you get to the other side, you'll be glad that you did it. You'll look back and say, I'm glad people in the past look back. Mandela, I don't think he regrets the time in jail. And I'm not saying you have to be in jail for 27 years. But I don't think anyone regretted marching in Selma. There will be a transition, like my eating all the steamed vegetables. It might be as easy as that. Eating steamed vegetables is not the worst thing in the world. You'll have to go through a transition of saying, yes, I was going to go to that thing, but I'm not going to go to that thing. And I'm going to find out something instead that's more consistent with my values, that's more consistent with what I want, and it will be more meaningful. You'll look back and be glad that you did. Comfort and convenience, according to you told me that comfort and convenience are the opposite of what made your role models. I didn't say that. Maybe I steered you a little bit. But if you're not perfect, if you want to improve and you have role models and they worked to get where they were, they took on challenges, this is your chance to take on those challenges. The lifestyle after the transition will be based on values that you want to emulate. You have to go through that transition as far as I can tell. Yes, it will be hard. You're not going to do things, you're not going to buy things, you're not going to get things that you like, and you're going to do things you don't like. And at the other end, you're going to look back and wish you'd done it before. This is your chance to lead yourself, to improve your life. The side effect, the kind of nice results that are the side effect, is that there'll be more clean air, more clean water, and you'll minimize the sea level rise. But that's not the main goal. The main goal is to live a better life. Because I believe if you're here, you value clean air, clean water, and minimizing sea level rise, and you don't value you being responsible for the opposite. Eventually, as it's turned out with me, and I think it will be the case with you, is that despite this feeling of sacrifice, of going through this transition, you'll look back and say, my life has more joy, more pleasure, more fun now as a result of what I've done. Even though in the transition, you felt like it was the opposite. So that one day in the future, when you sit there with your grandchildren on your knees and they say, so when people found out that the sea level, that was incontrovertible, what did you do? And you won't have to say to them, I watched Flipper and Gidget. You can say, what you did. I was on the lead of that. I led other people. I helped influence other people. Just like people who could say that I sat at the lunch counters with people and helped change a law that made it illegal for people with different skin color to sit at the same lunch counter together. Another example of the more joy and pleasure and fun is that, I don't know about you, like Ben & Jerry's is pretty sweet. I certainly like the taste of it. And if you don't eat that much of it, if you eat a lot of it, to me, I think an apple doesn't taste as sweet as Ben & Jerry's. But if you go for long enough without eating Ben & Jerry's, apples start tasting more and more sweet when you're not bludgeoning your taste buds with which has more sugar. Obviously, the ice cream has a lot more sugar, a lot more calories. But in my life, for not eating all of that Ben & Jerry's, the perception of sweetness is greater for me. So I have more sweetness, more fulfillment, more satisfaction as a result of having less bludgeoning in my taste buds with Doritos and so forth. Like that stuff is really crunchy, but now a carrot and celery is more of what I want. But it took a while to get there. And today the volume of food that I don't know anybody who eats more volume of food than me. And I love putting delicious things down my throat. But my calorie intake is not that great because I'm eating all these high fiber vegetables and things like that. And so I have great joy of eating a lot, eating tons, and yet not a whole lot of calories. So it's more joy, more pleasure, more fun. Again, I'm trying not to give facts here. I'm trying to tell you the impression of what's happened in my life this way. If you don't have facts, it's not from the lack of facts of being out there. By all means, go research this stuff. You can come up to me afterward, but I'm not here about giving facts. If you find them compelling, like I do, this is how to act on them. I'm not giving you tips. My goal is for you to want to find these things out, for you to want to do the research and find these things out. Maybe you'll find it's inconclusive and you don't want to do this. That's your business. I think, and I hope I find otherwise, but so far everything I look up, and I looked up a lot, and I know a lot of science, and I know a lot of leadership, and I know a lot of entrepreneurship, and I know a lot of academic stuff, and everything I come up with, and I have a lot of resources, and everything I come up with says it's conclusive. So if you're into it, watch The Story of Stuff, watch Cowspiracy, watch The Inconvenient Truth, and look the stuff up, and it'll give you tips and so forth. I'm here to help you. My goal is to doing these things that right now feel like deprivation and sacrifice, giving them meaning, giving you the sense that you're not alone. What you do will have results. I can't prove it, but that they will happen. And that if you don't, you'll never reach your potential. So I went to business school. So I got to do the 2x2 matrix. So actions, I divide things up into for others or for yourself, and passive or active. And so let's look at each of these quadrants. For yourself and passive, that's like things that you like, things that doesn't take much effort to do. So cookies and ice cream, like eating cookies and ice cream. I definitely like doing these things. That's passive stuff for yourself. What about active for yourself? What's that? Doing things that are active for yourself is things like exercise, personal growth. I'm a big fan of that. Big fan of that. I think it's great. It doesn't really, it's rewarding, but I don't think it's meaningful in the sense of helping others. So passive, let's look at stuff that's for others. Passive for others is things that I would call things like being aware, but not actually acting, knowing that what I'm doing affects other people, but not actually changing my behavior. So maybe feeling bad about it, and I'm not proposing you do this to feel bad about these things, because what I'm proposing is to go into the active for others area, the quadrant. Now, cookies and ice cream, that gives you pleasure. Exercise, personal growth, that gives you reward. Awareness without acting gives you some sense of direction, but really acting for others, that is leading others. That's taking responsibility, accountability, acting on empathy and compassion. That's being active for others. And I put to you, probably your heroes, the stuff that they did is probably up in that quadrant. And the thing is that the more that you do the things up there, the more that you get the low-level stuff also of the cookies and ice cream and the other quadrants. So this is about acting for others. I want to illustrate this with two friends of mine who in the past couple of months were diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Now, I'm not a medical doctor, so I don't know that much about how diabetes works and so forth. But my understanding is that it's not, I contrast it with getting a cold or some other disease where like an infection, where this bacteria or a virus has gotten inside you and your immune system is fighting back against something that's trying to take over your body. My understanding about type 2 diabetes, and this is from what I heard from them, is that it's more like if you punch yourself in the arm a lot, you'll eventually get a bruise. That if you hurt your body, if you do stuff that is unhealthy for your body will show signs of it being hurt, and it'll eventually, it'll lose capacity to do certain things. And my understanding is that if you eat a lot of sugar, that's damaging your body, and you mess up the systems and that's diabetes. And so one of them is J.V. Crum. He's kind of big, and if you go online, you can find him. He's a conscious millionaire. And if you go online to his blog, you can hear last December he got diagnosed with diabetes, and he goes to the doctor. The doctor says, you're going to have to take this medicine for the rest of your life. And by the way, this medicine, as I understand it, if you take the medicine, it requires you eating certain foods that require you to take the medicine again, and you get on this wheel that you can't get off of. He goes online and does his research and finds if you change your diet, my understanding is that if you change your diet, a lot of times this stuff can be reversed. So he does, and it does. He changes his diet and his lifestyle, and all his signs go back to non-diabetic. So he had the diagnosis, he changed his diet and lifestyle, and now, according to him, he would never go back. So if apparently he told me that he had, I think, at least a pint, maybe multiple pints of ice cream per week. And now there's no way he would go back. And it's not just because of the health. It's because he's living more in touch with himself now. He went through that transition. Now his transition came with the diagnosis that was really powerful. But that doesn't change. If he could go back and not get the diagnosis and change earlier, he would have. I think he would say the disease came a long time earlier. The diagnosis just showed that the disease was not being in touch. It was sleepwalking through life. of just going with pleasure, but not actually thinking about what he was doing, about not being that conscious, despite having conscious millionaire in his name. He also said, and you have to ask him to say it, how he says it very specifically, so I'm paraphrasing here, but he believes that pharma CEOs should be imprisoned because of putting people on that cycle when they know that the problem can be solved, and instead they put them on this treadmill of sending money their way. But I point out to you, they didn't eat the ice cream. They didn't produce the ice cream for that matter. So maybe the CEOs of the junk food makers should be put in jail. But again, they didn't, like Pepperidge Farm and Kraft and so forth. Maybe they're the ones who are peddling the stuff that causes the disease, but they didn't make you eat it. So people talk about laws to change the behavior of all these places. You know, to some degree I support them, but none of these places made anyone eat these things. And so there's a quick way to get them to change their behavior. If no one buys this stuff, because I checked, and no matter how unhealthy food some sort of product is, it's not unhealthy if you don't eat it. So I didn't really talk to him about this, but what I'm saying with you guys is that if you want to get these companies to change their behavior, legislation is one way, but people push back on that. But if people don't buy the stuff, they're not going to produce the stuff. And it improves your life, if you believe it's not healthy, to eat more healthy. They will change if nobody eats there. So the other person is Bill Cousins. He's the founder of Less Cancer. And you can find out about him because he wrote about me. Here's a story that he found out about me and came to me to help him change his behavior because it was difficult. He said, at home I eat very healthy. But when he's out, he says, it's really tough for me to pass a brownie without eating it. And I don't know that much about diabetes, but if eating too much sugar is the problem, it doesn't matter if you eat tons of spinach. If you also eat sugar, that's the issue. It's just like in leadership, I say, if you lead well a lot of the times, but every now and then you start yelling at people, you're not an effective leader. You can't. If you eat healthy most of the time and you eat a lot of sugar, again, I'm not a medical doctor, but I think that means you can get diabetes. Diabetes doesn't care how much spinach you eat, it cares how much sugar you eat. So anyway, we met and I helped him change his behavior. And he wrote this article. So, go to thrive.com, I forget. Look up Bill Cousins, Joshua Spodek, and the story is about me and the Big Bang Theorist. I'm the Big Bang Theorist. I brought him over to my place as a coaching client, and I cooked him food of the style that I described, and he really liked it. I think both of them would say that they had the disease long before the diagnosis, and the disease was living a life out of touch with themselves. And I think neither of them would ever go back to before. If you could magically make ice cream not cause diabetes, I think they would still not eat it. They had a burning platform that made them change. But I think they both would have rather changed earlier without the burning platform. If you look at the timescales for global warming effects, by the time effects are like burning platforms for us, we're so far into, it's so far past, because if we stop putting any carbon dioxide in the atmosphere today, you probably know that it's going to keep increasing. The temperatures will keep rising, and the polar ice caps will keep melting, and the sea levels will keep going up. So if we wait for burning platforms on this one, it's too late. But you don't need a burning platform. People don't need burning platforms to change. And they wish they'd changed earlier. What leadership does, what I'm hoping to do with you and what I hope you can do with others, is to inspire people to act on what they care about already, before you came along. Because a lot of people want to change and they want to reduce their global warming. They just don't want to be the chump, the loser, to be the only one. If we're all going to hell in a handbag, if we're all going down, they don't want to be the one who's uncomfortable. The thing is that I'm not uncomfortable. My life is better now. So the disease was there. The disease was denial, sleepwalking, seduced by comfort and convenience, lacking meaning, value, importance, and purpose. They have more of that. Listen to J.V. Crumb's podcasts on health. Read Bill Cousins' article about meeting with me. It's about meaning, value, importance, and purpose. And those things trump ice cream any day. I believe most people want clean air, clean water, and a stable sea level. They just don't want to be the chumps and losers who sacrifice while others enjoy. They miss the value to themselves, to lead, to reach their potentials. And that's what I'm trying to give you, to enable you to become the peer of your heroes and role models. My goal is to reveal that potential to you. That's what my book is about. To give your actions meaning. Meaning that Gidget and Watch and Flipper will never give you. to get you to be a part, to make you a sense that you're part of a community already and make that, strengthen that community. You came here, you will lead others. Others will follow you. They will start leading others themselves as well. And to have purpose. It means everything to have, for what you do, to have purpose, to be helping others, to be in the service of others. And this is all based on your values and goals to improve yourself. If you disagree with me, I'm not telling you what to do. But if you also find this stuff compelling, the science and so forth, to me, once it's compelling, I have to act on it. Because I have to take responsibility for how my behaviors affect others. If you believe that we should pass laws, the best way to get those laws to pass is through support, is through people doing things so that the laws support what people are, so that the leaders, the so-called leaders, in a democracy, the people who call leaders, they follow, they go for the votes. It's very rare that you have someone like JFK to say, let's get to the moon in 10 years. Generally, they go where the votes are. And in this country, when the price of gas drops, people buy SUVs like crazy. Some of us have to step up and reduce demand, reduce consumption in advance of these things. And I'm telling you, after the transition, I'm confident that you'll be glad that you did it. You can lead. If you don't, who will? Why did you come to a talk on leadership and the environment? If not, you had some interest in these things. There's some big challenges. As far as I know, Gandhi, King, Mandela, they all worked with civil disobedience. That's effective in changing human laws, but it's not, we can't change physical laws as far as I know. And as far as I know, it doesn't work with tragedy of the commons. So there's a big missing strategy. I'm working on what I know how to do now. Just like Martin Luther King, when he was working on the Montgomery bus boycott, he was, a lot of phone, you guys have worked on getting people to go places. Like you need phone trees and, this is pre-internet, so it's a lot of calling people up, a lot of doing like grunt work. He didn't know he was going to win a Nobel Peace Prize a decade later. He didn't know that he was going to give the I Have a Dream speech. He was working hard. That's what we're going to have to do at this stage. The thing is, my heroes got things done. They weren't politicians. They led politicians. Mandela eventually became president, but that was after apartheid was dismantled. And that's why I'm not going into politics. I support people doing it, like Al Gore. But I think the big motion is going to come from outside of that area, of working with people one-on-one, one-to-many. So who are the heroes? Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world. So many people say this before getting on a flight, first class. You have to be the change you want to see in the world. Mandela, Martin Luther King, Rachel Carson, who wrote Silent Spring, Thoreau, what's the use of a fine house if you haven't got a tolerable planet to put it on? He said that a century and a half ago. Donella Meadows and Dennis Meadows, who are big systems thinkers. I'll get into system stuff later. And Ralph Nader, an early Ralph Nader, who was so influential on passing so many consumer protection and environmental laws. I'll get to him in a minute. So your heroes. I'm not saying my heroes have to be your heroes. Do you want to emulate them? Do you want to emulate them? I asked you before, but now you know that means what it means. You're not going to get to watch Gidget. And people wanted to watch Gidget and Flipper. They weren't thinking, I'm not going to Martin Luther King. I don't know what they were thinking, but a lot of stuff of like Machu Picchu, it sounds great. There's a lot of things you want to do. And afterward, you'll look back and say, I'm glad that I did stuff that I didn't get to go to Costa Rica. I didn't get to eat all that steak, lots of things like that. Are you no longer satisfied with telling yourself that others have to change, but not you? Are you ready to lead yourself and lead others? Again, the transition will be hard. If you're sitting here thinking, no, it's not worth it. I'm not the one. Whatever Josh is talking about, things will solve themselves. Okay, great. That's your business. But if you're thinking people have to change, this is your chance. Take on the challenge. Grow in the ways that you could. You'll have to do what looks like deprivation and sacrifice now, just like your heroes did. That's how they became your heroes. You're going to have to avoid things you like and do things you don't, but later you'll be glad you did. You'll wish you did it early. I can't prove it. The scientist in me, this is a really hard thing for me to say. I can't prove that this will happen to you. I can say it happened to me, but it's to have faith, that is belief without evidence, in yourself, that you will be able to make the transition that I did. There's nothing special about me. I don't like turnips more than anybody else. I don't dislike mangoes any more than anybody else. I love them. They're my favorite. Frankly, I don't like our odds. When I really do the math, it doesn't look like it's going to work out. Even though, one thing, there's a couple things. One I'm about to get to. Another is that there are degrees of disaster. If we hit catastrophe, if we hit overshoot and collapse, maybe say the carrying capacity is 3 billion. We can drop down to 1 billion, but maybe we can level off at 3 billion. That's still billions of people that could be alive, that could be living joyfully. It could be, so there's levels of collapse. Just because we can't stop something from happening, if you believe that, doesn't mean, well, then let's just do whatever we want. And here's why. Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, routinely rated as one of the great books of the 20th century, the top 10 books, routinely reviewed as one of the great books of all time. It's about this guy, Viktor Frankl. In mid-century, last century, the Nazis caught him, put him and his entire family in concentration camps, eventually him by himself, without his family, in Auschwitz. Inarguably, one of the worst environments any humans have created for any other humans. And he talks about living there. When you get a chunk of moldy bread, and that's all you get, you're not getting enough calories to live on. Maybe some soup, and they get cigarettes. Back then, I guess cigarettes were viewed as healthy, or at least not unhealthy. And they weren't given enough to live on. They're slowly dying. And in order to keep yourself going, he talks about man's search for meaning. Meaning was having something to live for. When you don't have enough material stuff to live on, the difference, you need something to keep you going, meaning. And so he talked about even people who did not have to live on would still sometimes take a piece of their bread and give it to someone else who had less. That meaning made up for the lack of material stuff. And some of us, we could have more meaning in our lives. And the thing that he also talked about, when people had given up the will to live, he said sometimes you could tell when someone had given up the will to live because people would, the exceptions to this were when those who had lost the will to live wanted to enjoy their last days. Thus, when we saw a comrade smoking his own cigarettes, we knew he'd given up faith in his strength to carry on, because the cigarettes you would trade for food later from a guard or something like that. And once lost, the will to live seldom returned. And doing things that bring meaning make my life more meaningful. That's what meaning means. And even if I don't see the odds totally in our favor on this one, I'm not ready to enjoy my last days and just eat the bread and smoke the cigarettes and put material pleasure over meaning. I'm not ready to throw in the towel. Even if I would, the thing is that when I do this, when I act based on what's meaningful, I actually have more joy and pleasure in my life, because we're not on the border between life and death living today. As a society, as human, we may be overshoot and collapse, but we can change our behavior to be more meaningful and still have just as much joy and pleasure and happiness. I have more. So even if you, like me, feel like maybe there's no point, the guys who gave away the little bit of bread, I think they're glad they did it. Even if we can't save ourselves, I still find more meaning in living by my values, in living simply. And in the end, I end up enjoying delicious convenience, saving money, and community, because that's what working to reduce global warming means for me, is my life is more delicious, more convenient, more saving money, more community, more meaning, value, importance, and purpose. So I'm up here taking a leadership position. My vulnerability is, one thing is there's no equivalent to civil disobedience. I don't have a strategy here that, for all the challenges that King and Mandela and Gandhi and so forth took on, they had a strategy that worked. I don't know if it's strategy here. They got tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of people following them. If we get hundreds of millions of people to change their behavior, but not the remaining billions, it doesn't make a difference. For this to make a difference, billions of people have to change their behavior. That means acting on a global scale. That means, in some ways, I'm talking about being more influential than anyone in history in a timescale set by the sea levels rising, which is, we got decades. This has never been done before. Part of me is thinking, even the great figures in history that come around once a century or once a lifetime, they didn't do anything on this scale. Now, they didn't have tools like the internet to be able to influence people on this scale, nor was ever in the same boat like we are, like I believe that we are. But here effectiveness requires billions of people to change their behavior. Who do I think I am to think I'm going to become the Martin Luther King of pollution? These guys didn't affect anywhere near that number of people. This to me makes me feel very vulnerable. Like, who do I think I am? So I'm kind of diving this. I know that I'm going to be attacked. But what can I do? This is what I feel is right. And I'm not trying to tell people what to do. I'm trying to give people meaning and value so that they choose to do things that they want to do anyway. If I try, I can fail. It's easier to do those calculations and find out it's not worth it. It's easier. I can afford to fly the planes and just, go for the material pleasure, eat the bread, smoke the cigarettes. But there's more meaning in meaning. And, if it works, there's more success. Success means everybody living by their values, more people living more meaningful, valuable, important, purposeful, passionate lives. I hope that's the outcome of this from me to you. That you try these things and find out, go through the transition and see if on the other end you look back and say, I'm glad that I did that equivalent of going out on a hot summer day instead of watching Gidget, or eating, going for some of those bland vegetables for a while, and on the other side saying, wow, I didn't realize how delicious this food could be. People have been eating like this for most of human existence. It means everyone having more delicious, more convenient, more saving money, more community, because that's what reducing global warming is to me. It means billions of people waking up from sleepwalking. It's never been done before. Will it happen? I don't know. Is it worth trying? It is for me. It means replacing ignorance with integrity. That's what happens when you act. The environment doesn't care what you do publicly compared to if every little thing matters. That's integrity. Don't you like people in your life with integrity? Don't you like having integrity? This is an opportunity where what you do when people aren't watching matters. This is your ability to develop that. There are a few examples of success. So this is why I don't feel it's hopeless. So Martin Luther King, the civil rights movement, long way to go. We're not done yet. I want to point out, he didn't get people to do things that he wanted them to do. He got them to do what they wanted to do. Now, they didn't know they wanted to go to jail or get attacked by dogs or sprayed by fire hoses. He showed them how. It's not obvious that going to jail or police beatings or fire hoses or police dogs, this is what happened. It's not obvious that these things would create freedom, justice, and equality. But that's how civil disobedience works. It says, people are comfortable and convenient saying separate is equal. Now, you and I may think otherwise, but people are like, well, whatever, things may change later. He said, civil disobedience says, go do things that you think should be fair, sit at the lunch counter together, and eventually it'll happen. And if people get punished for it, then it gets out there in the world, says, what are we doing? Why are we stopping people from sitting at the lunch counter together? And so he gave them a way to do things that would achieve the goals that they wanted. We're not done yet, but we're a lot farther along, because 45 years after the I Have a Dream speech, 45 years after King himself said in the letter from Birmingham jail that wait has almost always meant never, that he said we have waited for more than 340 years for our constitutional and God-given rights. This is what he said in 1963. And that was 100 years from the Emancipation Proclamation. All sorts of reasons to think this change is not going to happen. We've been waiting 340 years. We've waited 100 years since the Emancipation Proclamation. But in less than half a century, 45 years from then, a black man became president. We still have a long way to go, but I bet very few people would have predicted Obama in 45 years from the I Have a Dream speech. I believe that's a major reason, not the only reason, but a major reason why Jesse Jackson was in tears at Obama becoming president. I don't think people predicted that turnaround that quickly. And I think people are happy that it happened. Whether you like the politics or not, Obama's politics, that's one thing. But that an African American could become president. Mandela negotiated with presidents from prison. He negotiated with 2 presidents from prison to take major steps to dismantle apartheid, eventually to become president himself. That's amazing. I think most people, if it didn't happen, I don't think most people would believe that it could happen. Ralph Nader, whether you like his politics or not, look at what he had done. Here are legislation that he was the leader in making happen, and not being a politician himself. Traffic Safety Act, Clean Water, Clean Air Act, the law creating the Environmental Protection Agency, consumer health, blah, blah, whistleblower protection, blah, blah. Look at all this stuff. Any politician would be proud to have this amount, whether you agree with it, what he did or not, he got it done. Freedom of Information Act, occupational OSHA, like whether you agree with this stuff, he got it done. This stuff can happen. Here at NATO-sponsored organizations, a longer list. This is going to, here's the A's, the B's, the C's, the C's, the G's, the E's, the F's. I just went up to the F's. This is a lot of stuff he got done. Northwest Fisheries, I think I talked about before, that some of them, there are communities where they said, if we keep doing this, we're going to all be out of jobs. So we got to figure out how we can make this sustainable. Can we take what they did in small areas and expand that to global? I hope so. I hope that by me doing stuff on leadership and the environment, that it leads to other people doing these things. Gandhi, Indian independence from England. That was a major social change. Some cap and trade stuff is happening. Not as much as it could, and I don't know if that's all the solution, but some of it's happening. Smoking is one of the big shifts. There were laws that changed, but I think the laws followed the social change. Smoking used to be cool. When I was a kid, smoking was cool. Now, I can't imagine if someone lit up a cigarette in a New York City restaurant or bar, I don't think people would wait to go to the authorities or wait to go. I think they would just say, please don't do that. As despite the social challenge of talking to someone, asking someone not to do something, I think smoking has turned the corner, at least in most populations in this country. When I was a kid, I would never have predicted that. I think sugar is the next one on that. Refined sugar, I think people are starting to look at that as like a refined white powder, as damaging as other ones. We'll see how that one goes. Then for me personally, the experiments that I did that I talked about, but not eating packaged food and not flying, improved my life. And I think that other people can go through those changes and get those benefits themselves. Another big shift, in the mid-1980s, there were these big famines in Africa, people dying. And people in this country didn't have to do anything about it. People would say, it's the world. I don't have to worry about that. They think, it's like, that's something for our children to solve. It's a future problem. It's not me today. And what a lot of artists said, they didn't have to do this. So people make a lot of money these musicians who make a lot of money, they did USA for Africa, and they sang words that are as relevant today as they were then, maybe more. We are the world. We are the children. It affects us. It is our world. It is us that this is affecting. We are also the ones to make a brighter day. So in that case, let's start giving, but let's start acting. And it made a big difference. Tens of millions of dollars were raised. We need to do different things today, but they did that. They didn't have to. They were leaders. You can help. You are not alone. Your actions have purpose and meaning. You don't have to wait for others to act first. You can lead yourself and others. That is the message here. You are not alone. Your actions have purpose and meaning. You don't have to wait for others to act first. You can lead yourself and others, and that is to improve your own life. So far it's me and Lee, the people who organized this talk. We can use design help for web pages, event planning, programming, to make it events like, right now I'm just talking to the internet, but to have in-person events, to have larger and larger groups. Legal, to found the organizations. Maybe this will be a nonprofit, I'm not sure. To write things, to speak, to organize. I'd love to do this on a bigger scale. Social media, PR, and more. I want to get this stuff to get out there. I think that there's demand for this. I think it's pretty big. And I don't think it's out there. Early projects I'd love to work on. If this sounds like something you'd work on, I would love to have your help on this. More events like this one. Imagine I'm speaking to the public. Or, this is me speaking to you, whoever's listening to this. More like this, but bigger, to get us out there. Maybe it'd be me speaking, maybe others. An interactive web page. I would love for people who do this, who find what I'm saying compelling and want to act to improve their lives and in the process, reduce their effects on global warming. I'd love to have a page where I could say to people while they're listening to me, go to this website right now and commit to you doing something to improve your life. Maybe it's not having meat eat, maybe it's one of the things I did, eating less meat or eating less packaged food or flying less or driving less or something like that. and to put up a public commitment that you're doing this, and to make a page, and then it'll email you back that that's happening. I want to make a podcast. Oh, I think that's a later point. Forming an organization. I would love help in forming a nonprofit or forming, maybe it'll be a for-profit, I'm not sure, but to make an organization to found this on, to reach other communities. I think I'm effective. I believe I'm effective in working with some groups, but it's a different solution for Africa. It's a different solution for Central America, for Asia, for Europe. It's a different solution for people significantly older than me, different for people significantly younger than me. Lots of different people have to communicate in lots of different ways, but I think there's still something about giving people meaning and value and importance and purpose in acting on what they consider right, on their values. A podcast. I'd love to get people talking about, I want to do a 2-part interview for all of them. I want to get people talking about leadership in the environment, and then talk to them again and have them in that conversation to commit. Maybe I'll get like Al Gore, Leonardo DiCaprio, or people like that to commit to being on my podcast. I'll interview them, and hopefully they can share things they haven't shared before. And I'm going to say to them, I want you to commit to something. No, I'm not sorry. I don't want you to. If you want to, use this as an opportunity to commit to changing your behavior in some way. And we're going to, and will you come back on in a month or 2 months or 6 months to talk again about that experience? Because I believe I'm going to get a lot of these people saying, now that I've acted, it's been incredible. And I believe that they're going to say, you should change. I think that you can change. You'll get the same benefit that I did. And working with me, I'm not talking about just work. If you like leadership in the environment, I have a lot to share. Working with me, I teach leadership, entrepreneurship, sales, coaching, and I think I'm pretty good at it. But here, I'm going to give you some quotes from some students who took my courses in leadership and entrepreneurship, just to give you a taste of it. If you work with me, you don't have to, but if you do, I think you'll get some of this. This course has changed my definition of leadership. Joshua is an amazing professor. He taught this class in a way that we learned about ourselves and then to understand others. He taught us how to find the real emotions and beliefs behind someone's behavior and to use that emotion to lead them and make them feel understood. If you want to say stuff like that, working with me, you'll develop that. Here's another quote. Absolutely, I would recommend this course not just to peers, but anyone interested in leadership. Honestly, even if you don't care about being a leader, this is the kind of class which can help anyone grow as a person, not only bettering themselves in terms of leadership, but also in terms of self-actualization. The social skills you learn in this class have never been taught to me in an academic environment. I suggest the School of Professional Studies keep this course because it's one of a kind. This is the opportunity that if you want to be someone who says stuff like that, work on this project. You'll get it without having to pay the thousands of dollars people who take my courses at NYU do. This is one of the greatest classes I've ever taken. It was engaging, thought-provoking, challenging, and fun. Josh is an incredible teacher, mentor, and friend to everyone in the class who was passionate about the subject matter. If I could take this class all over again, I would. How'd you like to say that about a project that you work on? I know you're busy. I know you got lots of stuff going on. If this is something that resonates with you, I could use your help. We could use your help. If you're not good at any of these things that I talked about event planning, about web page design, about things like that, we'll put any skills to use. But one requirement, this is not about telling others what to do. This is not about authoritarian, autocratic, or telling people this is the answer. This is about improving your life in ways and sharing it so that other people feel like I would like meaning like that in my life as well. So there is no place in this, I believe, and convince me otherwise, but I believe there's no place for people who say you should change but not me, because that doesn't make sense. This is about improving your life. So if you want to do this, start with a commitment to act. And I don't know what it'll be. Not having packaged food worked for me. Not flying for me worked for me. I was already not eating meat. But the point is not to say you should do this, but I did X, whatever it is, and it was awesome. And then I went to the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. Then let's do what no one has done before and improve people's lives, billions of people's lives, including, especially, your own, by leading them to enjoy life more and as a side effect, to reduce global warming, by caring for people enough to pollute less. And discover what I've discovered, what my life is much more about is delicious, convenient, saving money and community, meaning, value, importance, purpose, passion, empathy, responsibility, initiative, accountability. Thank you. Now let's get started.